Welcome to the next LabKey Tech Talk. My name is Corey Nathy. With me presenting today is Xing Yang. We're both developers here with LabKey and going to be talking about visualizing LabKey data. So we've split the talk into kind of two sections. I'm going to talk kind of a brief summary level about kind of built-in LabKey server visualizations. So this is once you've got your data into LabKey, into a grid, whether that's assay data, study data, whatever it might be, kind of what can you do with it from there? How can you view into it in different ways from a built-in standpoint? And then Xing is going to walk us through kind of more of the new features we've been working on over the last year in this area, the external tool integrations. So using things like the JDBC and ODBC connections to make LabKey available as a data source so that you can visualize the data in those third-party tools that a lot of your organizations are familiar with or have people working in already. And then we'll end with a live demo using Tableau. So from the built-in visualization standpoint, I want to start with kind of what we're calling the end-user visualizations. So these are the ones that wouldn't require any code. More of a kind of point-and-click type of visualization, and are often more of the dashboardy type of things. Just kind of views into distributions of data, or simpler views into your data that you can do within the LabKey system itself. The two we want to focus on are the column charts and the charting wizard. So from the screenshot in the back there, kind of hidden, is the column charts. So this is just a very simple one-click type of visualization. So when you're looking at a grid of data in LabKey and you click on the column header, based on the type of data in that column, you can get a box plot distribution, bar chart, or a pie chart, just to kind of get a quick view of how is the data in this data set represented. These do reflect filters, so if you filter your grid, these charts will refresh to respect those filters. And as you can see, multiple can be added to a single view at a time. These, in addition to reflecting filters, reflect live data, can be saved with a custom view. So if you have customized a view in LabKey to change the columns that might be shown or pull in additional columns, you can also save these visualizations with that view and share it with colleagues. The next step from there is the charting wizard. So this is the charting option that's more about kind of comparing different measures or dimensions from a grid of data in LabKey. So we support kind of the standard chart types, bar charts, box plots, line charts, pie charts, scatter plots, and with the study module, time charts as well. So from the two screenshots here, and I'll cover this a little bit in the demo as well, it's more of a kind of point and click. So you're starting from your grid of data in LabKey, you go into the charting wizard, and you can kind of drag the column names for the various different measures and dimensions and define your chart that way. So what's on the x-axis, what's on the y-axis, and things like that. And then based on the type of chart, you can do various different what we call chart layout options. So for this box plot example in the bottom corner, you might be able to change the size of the points or the labels on the axes. Just kind of customize it in the way that makes the most sense for your data. Similar to the column charts, these can be saved as private or public reports attached to that grid of data in LabKey, reflect live data, reflect filters, kind of all of that. All of those types of things apply to all of the visualization types that we're going to talk about today. The next step from there on the built-in visualization side is the developer-based reports. So these are the types of reports that kind of go the next step in customization. So if those built-in reports from the last slide don't quite have all the features or options you need for your particular type of data, or if there's specific ways that a given type of data is often represented, there are these options of R reports and JavaScript reports. Developer would need to be in the developer group on your LabKey server to author one of these and save it, but it allows for that customization. So for example, with R, there's all sorts of R packages that many of you are familiar with that can be loaded onto your LabKey server and made available for these R report types, so that, knitter, as an example, is a popular R package that can be used in these types of reports and visualizations. Likewise, on the JavaScript report side, you can make use of JavaScript libraries in addition to our LabKey JavaScript API libraries for accessing data through select rows, things like that, but also the visualization plotting library that we have, which is what is the basis for the last set of reports that I talked about. So a lot of these JavaScript type of reports are all built off of that central labkey.viz.plot API package library. So those can also be used in this type of report. The last slide on the built-in visualization side is just kind of to give you a breadth view of some of the other more custom visualizations. So many of these are, like the title indicates, module specific. So there's several cases where for a certain type of assay or a certain type of data, there's a common way that people look at that type of data, whether it be for tracking controls over time or digging into assay results. But a lot of those have been built into the LabKey modules themselves, so that as you use those tools, you enter data for that type of for that type of assay or module, you can just, these plots are available and updated. Like I mentioned, the quality control is a common trend, so the QC trend report in the upper left, the panorama example, and the Luminex Levy-Jennings report are all examples of that kind of visualization that allows you to view your assay data over time to make sure it's complying with your set of requirements for controls or standards in your assay data. But there's also examples of the kind of dive deeper into the data for HPLC, NAB, flow cytometry. A lot of those visualizations are more about looking at a single run of data at a time and kind of interacting with that data in a visual way to kind of see what might have changed or what's going on. So now I'll turn it over to Xing for the external tool integration part.
Thanks, Corey. So in addition to the built-in visualizations Corey mentioned, LabKey also integrates with a wide variety of external tools. Those external third-party tools allow LabKey users to create very complex and customized reports and visualizations using well-established products with deep knowledge bases. Data presentation on the third-party tool can also be live, so that when data is updated in LabKey server or new data is incorporated, they will automatically update on the integrated tool. They can also integrate with existing LabKey report infrastructure, so analysis can be done on a centralized platform. This also means convenience. You no longer need to download data from LabKey and transfer it to another tool. LabKey understands that data and data security is at the heart of every organization. So while making effective usage of data on third-party tool, we also make sure that the data remains protected. That means all security settings present on LabKey server, including user permission, PHI, and audit, will still apply when the data is accessed from the third-party tool. So we'll look at a few examples of integrated third-party tools next. First, RStudio is a popular IDE for R. As Corey mentioned, R reports are a built-in developer visualization tool for LabKey. With integrated LabKey RStudio, you can choose to edit R reports in a much richer development environment, the RStudio, as opposed to LabKey's built-in script editor. Also, sandboxing is a software management strategy that isolates application from critical system resources. It adds an extra layer of security to prevent harm from malware or other applications. With Sandbox RStudio integration, you can add more user to LabKey group safely. With integration, a user can also install their own private R packages. As Corey mentioned, system admin would have to install R package that can be used on LabKey server, but if you want a specific R package that's not available, or if you want a specific version of R package, you can now do that in the integrated RStudio. Reports are round-trip editable. That means when reports are edited in RStudio, they will be automatically saved back to LabKey server. And similarly, when a report is updated in LabKey server, they will reload in RStudio. This eliminates the need to pass around reports and enables collaborative data analysis. When launching RStudio from LabKey user credentials and permission will automatically be applied on RStudio side, and this is done using our LabKey package. This integration works both with the open source free version of RStudio Server as well as the commercialized RStudio Server Pro. Shiny app is a rich interactive web application that's built using R. As you can see from the example Shiny app on the right side, Shiny allows user to change the assumption on which the analysis is based. So if you change the input, the outputted result will also update. With RStudio LabKey integration, you can now create interactive Shiny app in integrated RStudio. Note that Shiny app is still currently not a supported built-in report type, but the work we did to proxy WebSockets for RStudio Shiny enables us to move a step further from being able to support it eventually. So RStudio integration feature is a premium feature. Next tool, Spotfire, it's a analytics platform that has been successfully tested to work with LabKey server using JDBC connection. To configure Spotfire to be able to load data from LabKey is simple. You just place LabKey's JDBC driver into the Spotfire's configuration folder and then configure a data source by specifying the LabKey connection URL and a LabKey username and password. Once configured, Spotfire is able to then load data from LabKey server using the JDBC driver and then build visualization using the data. This is as well a premium feature. So next, we'll look at one of our most recent integration solution. That is to support connecting to LabKey data using ODBC connection. And this is done by implementing Postgres wire protocol within LabKey server. Each LabKey project, which is a container or folder, is exposed to the third-party tool as a separate Postgres database. The database then lists LabKey query schema. If you are familiar with LabKey's schema browser, this is the same data presentation if you go to the LabKey schema browser. Like with all other type of integration, ODBC connection respects all security settings that's present on the LabKey project. Also, only read access is supported. Data cannot be inserted or updated using this ODBC connection virtual schema. The client application can use the standard Postgres ODBC driver and then configure a data source name for it to connect to a LabKey instance. We also have lately added support for secure encrypted connection via TLS so that we can use it in a high secure and compliant setup. So Tableau is a visualization tool that's focused on business intelligence. As a Tableau technology partner, LabKey adds the ability to connect biomedical research data to the visualization and the analytics that Tableau provides through ODBC connection. Tableau Desktop is able to load data from LabKey using its other database ODBC option. Do note that this option is not available for the free version, the free Tableau public version, as that one only supports loading data from a file. So once connected, as you can see from the right side, demo study is a project present on LabKey server. The project, LabKey project, is listed as the database, and then the schema is the same as the query schema that's exposed by LabKey server, and then as well the queries as well are listed as tables. You can then load data from any tables. And once the data is loaded, Tableau will automatically characterize a field as either dimension or measure, and then you can use standard Tableau chart creation option to create to plot those data. This is the list of other tools that can connect to LabKey using ODBC connection, including Excel, Access, Matlab, SQL Server Reporting Service, SSRS. So the list does not stop here. Other tools have been reported to be compatible with LabKey using ODBC connection, and they include SQL DBX, Primo SQL, Power BI, Jump. They have not been extensively tested, but some of our clients told us that they tried it out and it worked for them. While also always looking to expand your ability to visualize LabKey data using ODBC connection. So let us know if integration with another ODBC client would be useful to your organization. And now I'll hand this back to Corey for demoing visualizing LabKey data using Tableau.
Great, thank you. So I need to exit. So some of you may have seen Steve from LabKey has created a great demonstration video of this Tableau experience. So I'm I'm using the same data source that he did and kind of want to show you kind of how some of that was set up, how that connection was made, and that. So if I do the demo in reverse, let's jump to the end first. So here in Tableau Desktop, this is running on my local machine. I have saved a workbook, I believe they're called in Tableau, that with some visualizations saved that have already been created in this case, connected to my local machine here as the LabKey data source. So as you can see right away, I'm asked for my password. So this, as Xing indicated, is the indication that the permissions model within LabKey is still respected. It's making that connection as the user I just signed in as, and I can see the data through the ODBC connection, the same as the data that I could see if I logged into the LabKey server itself. So this demo study that I'm using is a completely fictional study, but it's meant to represent an HIV study, so comparing cohort groups of HIV negative individuals with acutely infected individuals, but also comparing those individuals on antiretrovirals and those that are not. So here is an example plot comparing the CD4 values with viral load counts for those treatment groups. So the antiretroviral group, the natural controller group, and those not on antiretrovirals. So using, once the visualization is created, saved in Tableau, as you can see, you can use the normal Tableau interactions and options to interact with that data. And if I just click through a couple more just to give you some ideas of the shape of data here, and some of you are far more familiar with Tableau than I am and can think about some more of the options, but this is a simple line plot of the different participants in this fictional study, comparing their viral load values over time. And as you can see, for example, if I look at the natural controllers, you would expect they're the ones that after they get infected with HIV, their body's able to control the virus naturally and be able to compare that in this visualization with the other control groups. And Tableau also has many different other charting visualization options, demographic participant location type of chart here as an example. But to kind of work backwards again, so to show the data source tab here in Tableau, as Xing mentioned on the slide, and this is very similar for the other types of tools that connect to LabKey with the ODBC driver. It's usually about, once that connection is made, you're shown what would be the virtual schema in LabKey. So not the true database schema tables at the lowest level in LabKey, but the virtual tables, because of kind of like that permissions model as we talked about. So the schema names and table names would be from, in this case, the Explore research study container in my LabKey server. And in this case, I've used Tableau to do a join. So I think this icon here indicates that I've done a left join between my lab results data, my viral load data, with the medical history information. So to get the participant, some of the demographic information about the participant, I'm able to do that join in Tableau. Also mention that you could, if you're more familiar with like the LabKey SQL Server side, you could do all of your kind of data setup, your queries on that side, and those queries would also be exposed through the ODBC connection. So there's some flexibility there on what you're most comfortable with. Do you want to shape your data in LabKey, save those queries there, or would you rather just pull the source data to Tableau and do the manipulations on that side? So to jump over to my local LabKey server and show a little bit of the built-in visualizations for this same data set. So here is the study folder on my local machine for this example HIV/AIDS research study. It's listing some of the kind of data sets that were collected for this study that were mentioned. And here I have an example of a query, a LabKey SQL query that joins the physical exam data set with demographic information. So the left-hand set of columns in this case come from one table, one study data set in LabKey, and that's joined to the demographic data. And as discussed in the built-in visualizations part of the talk, we can then take and create various different column charts in this view to quickly get a representation of the distribution of, in this case, the pulse variable from this data set. But also I've saved a box plot example report from the chart wizard. So from the charts and reports option menu in the LabKey grid here, I can select that saved report and give you an idea of what those visualizations look like and how they're attached in LabKey server itself. And if I go into edit mode here quickly, just to show kind of that drag and drop, what we call the end user visualization experience. So the columns from this particular joined LabKey SQL query all show up here as options that I can drag into the various different parts of, in this case, my box plot. So if I wanted to replicate this box plot on the Tableau side, just to kind of walk through those steps to give you an idea of what setting up a data connection looks like, I can go ahead and create a new workspace in Tableau. And the ODBC connection here, option on the left, sorry if that's a little small and hard to read. If anybody that knows Tableau knows how to zoom, let me know. I wasn't able to find it, so we'll stick with this. So if I select that option to connect to my local host, I can use the Postgres SQL Unicode driver. In this case, I use localhost, but this would be the name of your LabKey server. From the LabKey server itself on the admin console page, I didn't show this, but I had previously set it up. You have to kind of enable this as an option from the LabKey server side. The default port is 5435, I believe. We'll find out in a second. But that can be configured as well from that admin console site level page. The database name, the terminology here is slightly different than LabKey terminology, but the database name is the container name on the LabKey side. So in this case, my container is called Explore Research Study. And it can be a connection for my user account to any of the containers that I have access to when kind of looking and browsing in LabKey itself. And then the credentials, which I always type in correctly doing a demo. So once I've made that connection, I can, from the left-hand panel here, browse my data. So I'm going to go ahead and just load all of the schemas. And I apologize that this is small, but if those of you who have looked at the schema browser in LabKey server itself, you'll see common schema names here. So this is the schemas as they're represented for the user looking at the LabKey server itself. So I'll pick the study schema, since that's what we've been talking about here. And if I load the tables for that study schema, you'll see I have many in this list. Again, this is a combination of the source tables themselves, so the study data sets, but also any saved LabKey SQL queries that I've created I have access to for my user account. So the physical exam plus demographics one that I was showing in the LabKey UI, I can select that as a data source option here, and actually update the data in the grid here to see very similar representation and tabular view of what we saw on the LabKey side. Just to very quickly then replicate that box plot, just to show you, for those of you who might not have seen Tableau before, an example of how that works. So again, if I go over to creating a new sheet, in this case, in my Tableau workbook, I can select from the various different columns available in that data source I selected. So I'm going to take the pulse measure and put it as the rows, and the antiretroviral regimen type as the columns. By default, Tableau sets the aggregate measures, so whenever you use a measure, it tries to sum them or do some calculation across them. I can disable that so we can see the individual data points, which are often more meaningful for a box plot. I can change the data shape size. I can use another variable to color the data points by gender, in this case. And on the Analytics tab in the upper left, I can actually make this a box plot instead of just a scatter plot. And for those of you that know Tableau better than I did some Googling to find out how to jitter the data points in Tableau. So if I go back to the Data tab, I can create a calculated field using the index function and throw that on my columns list as well to kind of get a visualization that looks very similar to the one I showed you on the LabKey side. And then this can be saved to my Tableau workspace. Again, when I reopen Tableau tomorrow, it will have, after I make my credentials login, it will have pulled the latest data. It's not, I think there is options in Tableau to extract the data rather than use a live feed. I'm not real familiar with all those myself, but this should hopefully give you an idea of what that ODBC connection makes available for tools like Tableau or Microsoft Access, Excel, those ones that were listed on the slide that Xing did. And that's, I think, all we had for today. Any questions?